Amazing twist. Housekeeper's daughter discovers hidden error, saving CEO $100 million in a panic. Sarah's fingers grazed the glossy mahogany desk, her heart racing as she shifted through the financial reports. The sprawling estate of David Winters loomed around her, stark against the modest home she shared with her mother. A feeling of disbelief washed over her when she stumbled upon an error that could topple the titan of the tech industry. $100 million, misplaced, recklessly overlooked. The weight of that revelation hit her with an intensity that felt like a punch to the gut. She had seen the burdens her mother carried as a housekeeper, how her hard work translated to a meager paycheck. But was she really ready to dive headfirst into this chaotic world of privilege and power? Loyalty battled within her, threatening to rip her apart. How could she betray the household they had known for years? The respect she held for David Winters, the man whose name meant security for so many, tangled with a relentless sense of rightness. Her determination to become an accountant was rooted in her mother's sacrifices, in the understanding that honesty should always come first. But the repercussions of speaking up gnawed at her. What if her mother lost her job? What if David's empire collapsed due to one person's courage? As she watched David through the glass walls of his office, a picture of confidence, she couldn't help but feel small. The man was practically a giant, a man navigating a world governed by wealth while she struggled to pay for her night classes and juggling tables at the diner. Yet there was a flicker of vulnerability behind his piercing gaze, something that spoke of a man grappling with corporate expectations and unrelenting ambition. They were worlds apart, but in that moment they were connected by the fear of failure. The tension between obligation to her family and the moral compass driving her forward became suffocating. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Bubbles of anxiety popped in her stomach as the staff meeting loomed closer. Colleagues cast worried glances around the room, their futures tossing in the sea of corporate decisions. The air thickened, each breath strained, as she felt like an intruder in a world of ambition and entitlement. The meeting began to unfold, yet her mind spiraled, each breath an echo of her growing determination. Would she find the courage to interrupt? The turmoil inside her felt like a storm, the urgency now bordering on desperation. Then, with that sense of desperation morphing into a fierce resolve, she stood. A deep breath filled her lungs, and she stepped forward, muscles tense, hands trembling. The room paused, anticipation hanging like a cloud, and the eyes of the board members bore into her, relentless. David's brows furrowed in surprise, but it was the contemplative shift on his face that stole her breath away, a crack opening in the wall between their worlds. Would he hear her? Would he accept this unvarnished truth she was about to lay bare? The moment stretched agonizingly, a precipice of possibility and danger. As she prepared to voice her plea, her heart thudded in her chest, volition on the brink of transformation, an echo that could either topple the facade of the corporate titan or realign her life forever. The silence in the room was deafening as Sarah clenched her fists, summoning every fragment of courage she possessed. It seemed as if time suspended around her, nerves vibrating with both fear and a sense of purpose. She could feel the warmth of embarrassment creeping up her neck, but the pressure of her own conviction ignited a flame within her. The realization surged through her veins. She wasn't just a housekeeper's daughter anymore. She was a potential game changer. "Mr. Winters," she started, her voice trembling yet firm, "I've found an error in the financial reports." The words tumbled out, breaking the stillness like a thunderclap. She saw the surprise reflected in David's eyes, and for a fleeting moment doubt filled her heart. But then she remembered her mother's long hours and invisible burdens, and she pressed on. As she laid out the figures, how a single digit had shifted, miscalculating expenses, she witnessed a slow transformation in David's demeanor. At first, disbelief masked by analysis, but then a dawning understanding as he scrutinized the numbers she presented. His confidence melted into concentration, the monumental weight of accountability dawning on him. In that moment, she also felt the shifting tides within her. Each glance from the board members morphed from skepticism to respect, their expressions slowly acknowledging her. The tension was threadbare. She fought to reinforce her stance against the rising tides of anxiety. This was more than an error uncovering. It was checkmate against the shroud of secrecy that often swathed the corporate world. David's lips pressed into a thin line, his focus absorbed in the data. He raised his hand to halt the murmurs around the table, his authority echoing in the uncertainty of the room. "If what you're saying is true, this could change everything," he declared, a mix of urgency and intrigue weaving through his statement. The weight of accountability shifted the atmosphere, an awakening, but not without cost. Sarah felt the suffocating constraints of her precarious position within this elite circle. She was no longer just a spectator, but thrust into the narrative, becoming acutely aware of the vast chasm between her origin and her current reality. She was...
And a wave of euphoria washed over her as she realized the pivotal power her voice could have. Questions swirled chaotically in her mind. What would happen next? Would David trust her? More significantly, how would it affect her mother, who had silently carried the hardships of their life? Her heart raced ahead of her thoughts, merging fear with ambition, knowing full well that change was rarely without sacrifice. As the meeting progressed, discussions pivoted like a chess game. David sought clarity and recommendations, glancing at her with newfound respect. This tension wasn't just a corporate dilemma. It was an awakening of her potential, as though the chains of her past were slowly being forged into a weapon for her future. After the meeting, discussions pivoted like a chess game. David sought clarity and recommendations, glancing at her with newfound respect. This tension wasn't just a corporate dilemma. It was an awakening of her potential, as though the chains of her past were slowly being forged into a weapon for her future. After the meeting, as the board filed out, David approached her, a contemplative look etched on his face. "May I have a word?" His question, or was it a command, echoed in her uneasy heart. She stood straighter, emboldened yet anxious. This was territory she had never tread upon. She could either retreat into the shadows of self-doubt or step forward into the light of her own potential. "Absolutely," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. What awaited her beyond that threshold? Every beat of her heart resonated with the thrill of possibility. The moment of truth loomed larger than life, waiting for her decision. Now, as she faced him, she realized this was just the beginning of a critical transformation, both for herself and for the corporation she once merely watched from a distance. Would she seize this opportunity to carve her destiny, or would the fears of her upbringing quell the flames of her ambition? The question hung heavily in the air, ripe for resolution. David motioned for her to follow him into a quieter corner of the room, away from the lingering gaze of the board members. The ambiance shifted from tense scrutiny to the possibility of intimacy, yet Sarah felt the knot in her stomach tighten. She wasn't just facing a colleague anymore. She was standing before someone positioned high above her in the corporate hierarchy, the weight of his expectations heavy in the air. "Sarah," he began, his tone a mixture of admiration and consideration, "that was impressive work. I didn't expect such insight from you." The compliment nudged her confidence, yet the unspoken tension stirred doubt deep within her. What did he really mean? Was this just a platitude, or did he see potential where she barely acknowledged it herself? "Thank you, Mr. Winters," she replied, her voice steadying. "I noticed the anomaly while working on the reports. The discrepancy was just glaring. I felt compelled to share it." Her words emerged with unintentional assertiveness, revealing her desire to be taken seriously. David studied her like a puzzle, the elements of curiosity and contemplation flashing across his face. "You didn't just do your job. You showed an acute business acumen. This is rare talent, and I want to explore what you can do."
His praise ignited a flicker of excitement in her. Yet, alongside that excitement came the cacophony of insecurities she had grown accustomed to managing. Who was she to claim a role in shaping corporate decisions? Every instinct screamed for her to slip back into the background, yet she felt empowered by the authority he was granting her. "Sir, I'm grateful for your support, but I'm just He raised a hand, interrupting her. "You're just nothing. That's a limit you impose on yourself, and I think it's time to reconsider. Would you be interested in working directly with me on this project? I could show you the ropes, help you understand the financial landscape." The offer was exhilarating, yet terrifying. Instinctively, her mind raced through the implications. To work directly under David meant stepping into a world that had always felt just out of reach. Would she be able to stand the pressure? Would she misstep, shaking the foundation of her newfound respect? Of course, she attempted to sound composed. "I mean, yes, I would love to help." There was a tremor in her voice that betrayed her, that excited anticipation mingled with acute dread. "Good," he nodded. "I believe you can bring a fresh perspective that this company needs. Let's think strategically on how to communicate your findings to the rest of the board. Accounting errors impact reputation, and we must be strategic in how we address that publicly." His keen focus on strategy ignited a desire within Sarah, one that had begun metaphorically burning since her decision to speak up. She needed to match that ambition with her own. What had been a simple act of honesty was morphing into a lesson that would shape her professionally and personally. "Is there anything specific you'd like me to prepare?" It was a question that had shifted from uncertainty to her pursuit of ownership over this new role. "Come by my office tomorrow morning. We'll review your analysis and lay out a plan to present it to the board," he instructed. They exchanged glances, and she breathed out a slow, deliberate breath. David's acceptance felt like a solidification of her pathway. She wasn't merely a visitor in this sphere anymore. But a storm brewed in her mind, grappling with fears of incompetence and betrayal by her own ambition. As she exited the room, Sarah's heart raced, excitement fused with a growing sense of urgency. The task David set before her felt monumental, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this uncharted territory could either elevate her or expose her vulnerabilities in ways she couldn't anticipate. Setting her resolve, she knew this was a critical juncture. One misstep could unearth the fears she had buried deep. But with the eyes of the board slowly shifting toward respect, she couldn't afford to waver now. Would she navigate the tightrope of expectations and her burgeoning capabilities without losing herself in the process? The thought hung in the balance, an impending storm. Promising change, yet whispering the risk of failure. The next day loomed large. How would she prepare to confront the very doubts threatening to drag her back? Would she face the reality of her own capabilities and embrace the challenge ahead? The morning sun pierced through her apartment window, illuminating the cluttered desk where Sarah had hastily arranged notes and documents the night before. A myriad of thoughts raced through her mind as she little by little transformed her living space into a makeshift command center. The reality of her new role buzzed like a live wire, igniting a determination she didn't know she possessed. She leaned over her notes, reviewing her analysis of the recent financial reports. The discrepancy seemed like a simple error, but the more she scrutinized it, the more complex it appeared. Would David expect her to bring something revolutionary to the board? The weight of expectation loomed large. Her instincts told her that this was no ordinary meeting. The stakes felt impossibly high. As she sipped her coffee, she instinctively grasped at the edges of her insecurities like a lifeline. What if she presented her ideas poorly? What if the board's response to David's excitement was less than enthusiastic? The self-doubt was familiar, but unwelcome. Trying to quell her anxious mind, she refocused on the task at hand, reminding herself of David's unwavering faith in her potential. Arriving at the office, she navigated through the maze of cubicles, each step feeding the rush of adrenaline that surged within her. The environment felt charged with opportunity, as if she was standing on the cusp of a transformative moment. Yet the underlying fear, whether she truly belonged in this sphere, crept in the back of her mind like a faint echo, promising distraction. David's office, a sleek expanse dominated by glass walls, greeted her. He motioned for her to sit, an air of purpose clinging to him. As Sarah settled into the chair opposite him, the initial pang of anxiety dissolved, replaced by an urgent need to prove herself. "Good morning, Sarah. Let's jump right in." His brisk tone showed no signs of underestimating her prowess. As they began reviewing her findings, his reactions fluctuated between intrigue and admiration. He questioned her methodologies, prompting her to explain the reasoning behind her analysis. Each inquiry felt like an exhilarating challenge, pushing her to articulate her thoughts with clarity and conviction. "I believe this anomaly impacts our projected revenue. If we adjust for these errors, it significantly alters investor confidence," she explained, the words spilling from her mouth with newfound authority. David nodded, his eyes narrowing as he assessed her points. "You've hit the nail on the head. Presenting this effectively is crucial. We need to illustrate not only the problem, but present actionable solutions that enhance our credibility. Can you develop a visual presentation to accompany your analysis?" Her heart skipped. A visual presentation, a step beyond the reports she had relied upon. It would require translating sheer data into a narrative that resonated with the board. The challenge both thrilled and petrified her, but the thought of disappointing David propelled her forward. "Absolutely, I can do that," she affirmed, her voice steadier than she felt inside. As their session continued, Sarah realized she was weaving her insights into a larger context, connecting dots that illuminated profound truths about the company's financial landscape. With each moment spent with David, she could feel a shift, not only in how he perceived her, but how she perceived herself, as a pivotal contributor rather than just a cog in the machine. With their meeting drawing to a close, David leaned back in his chair, delivering a smile that bore equal portions of pride and expectancy. "I'm counting on you to make this presentation memorable. You know your work better than anyone else. Trust in that." Walking out of the office, her pulse quickened again, this time with excitement rather than fear. The complexities of her findings were now intertwined with a sense of ownership, along with the weight of responsibility. Could she truly rise to the occasion and meet the expectations that had shifted so dramatically? The reality of her abilities crystallized with each step, yet doubt still simmered beneath her budding confidence. The presentation loomed like a dark cloud, threatening to unleash its storm at any moment. But as Sarah prepared to dive deeper into the nuances of her work, she felt a fire burning inside her. What secrets would emerge from her analysis, and could she wield them to transform not only her role within the company, but their future trajectory as well? With the pressure intensifying, she confronted an undeniable truth. Sometimes the greatest risk lies within the thresholds of our own potential. The question was no longer merely about the data, it was about the very fabric of her identity as a professional in a high-stakes world. Was she ready to shatter her self-imposed limitations, or would she fall back into the shadows, relinquishing the very opportunity she had longed for? The days that followed felt like a spiral of relentless deadlines and emotional peaks. Sarah immersed herself in the data, piecing together her visual presentation with feverish intensity. Each slide transformed her findings into a coherent story, engaging the audience she had once feared. The stark contrast of numbers became vibrant charts, breathing life into her analysis and drawing a narrative thread through the complexities. Yet with each small victory came an undercurrent of anxiety. Despite the supportive echoes of David's confidence, the looming board meeting was a specter that occupied her thoughts relentlessly. What if her efforts fell flat? The thought of her ideas being dismissed was almost paralyzing. She grappled with the relentless internal dialogue questioning her worth. There was comfort only in the solitude of her evenings as she reflected on her journey so far. Each moment spent in the glow of her laptop, she felt the edges of her self-doubt begin to wear a bit thinner. Dedicating nights to refine her slides, she found new patterns in the data and started to uncover underlying narratives, new angles to present that strengthened her argument. The multifaceted picture behind the numbers became clearer, more compelling. Sarah spent hours rehearsing her delivery in front of the mirror, crafting an authoritative yet relatable persona. Each iteration drove home the importance of authenticity. The audience needed to feel her commitment to the data, to understand that it was not just numbers, but the future of the company. The imminent presentation became nothing less than her moment of truth. On the eve of the meeting, she laid out her notes, preparing meticulously, yet allowing the enormous weight of anxiety to seep in. As she sat at her desk, candlelight flickering against darkening walls, she felt both dread and exhilaration. This was it. This was her opportunity. "Why am I so afraid?" she whispered instinctively, seeking the answer in the fading echoes of her self-criticism. The discomfort of vulnerability twisted in her gut. A chilling thought crossed her mind. What if she wasn't meant to lead this charge? But no, she had to protect the narrative she was weaving. She had crafted it with intention and clarity. As dawn broke, illuminating her apartment once again, Sarah made her way to the office, her heart pounding with each step. The world outside felt invigorating, people rushing by with purpose, each tethered to their destinies. She realized she was no longer simply part of the scenery. She was carving her own path, blazing through doubt toward her potential. David awaited her in the conference room, a reassuring presence that felt like an anchor. The board members filed in, their expressions unreadable, a blend of curiosity and skepticism. Sarah took a deep breath as she connected her laptop, the weight of their gazes intensifying the familiar rush of adrenaline. "Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to share my analysis of the recent discrepancies," she began, her voice steady, echoing authority she hadn't known she could embody. With each slide, the narrative unfolded, leading them through her meticulous examination of the data, illuminating risks and proposing solutions. She could see the flickers of engagement in the board's eyes. She could feel their interest building. It was exhilarating, and for the first time, she felt in control. As she approached the final slide, where the implications of her findings converged with actionable proposals, a sudden wave of clarity washed over her. It wasn't just about presenting numbers anymore. It was about embodying a leadership mindset, showcasing the possibilities that lay ahead. Yet, just as she closed in on her conclusion, a thought sparked. What if she dared to bring forth the undercurrents beneath this analysis? Armed with newfound confidence, she crafted a bold closing remark, hinting at an internal risk that could crack wide open if ignored. The room grew tense as she finished. Suddenly, the energy shifted, and Sarah sensed a pivotal moment hanging in the air. The board members exchanged somber glances as her words lingered, sparking conversations that ignited the room with heated discussions. In an unexpected turn of events, David's expression shifted to one of awe, and as he spoke up, an intriguing truth bubbled to the surface. "Sarah, if what you're suggesting is accurate, we could be facing a significant hidden error with far-reaching implications." Elated yet apprehensive, Sarah realized the weight of her findings could extend beyond her expectations. The presentation was far from over. It was merely the beginning of something much bigger than she anticipated. Would her revelations galvanize them toward a new strategic direction, or would she become the bearer of unsettling news, challenging the very foundation of their operations? Driven by curiosity and a need for reassurance that she wasn't alone in this revelation, she faced the board again, ready to navigate the unknown. As conversations began to swirl, she recognized that the future was no longer a solitary path. It was an intricate web of interconnected possibilities. Could she hold firm in the face of potential turmoil? The time had come for her not just to inform, but to inspire change. As the board began to shift their energy, a new chapter awaited her, a tumultuous journey into uncharted waters where she would have to confront even deeper facets of her identity and resilience. What awaited her now in the aftermath of such a pivotal moment? The discussions in the boardroom intensified, transforming into a whirlwind of debate and speculation. Sarah could feel the electric energy around her. It was as if a monumental wave was beginning to swell. Her heart raced, but she fought to remain centered. "Sarah," a board member said, breaking through the murmur of voices, "can you help us understand the potential impact of this hidden error you're hinting at? What specific actions do you propose?" Sarah swallowed hard, her mind racing through the layers of her analysis. This was not just a matter of numbers. It was about the company's integrity, about trust, and about the values she held dear. The error, if it remains unchecked, could lead to significant financial losses that not only impact our quarterly results, but could also damage our market reputation, she answered, her voice gaining strength with each word. "I propose we conduct a thorough audit, collaborating cross-departmentally to pinpoint the discrepancies and devise a roadmap for correction." The board nodded, reflecting the gravity of her suggestion. She could feel their focus sharpening, but beneath this authority lay a creeping doubt. Would they embrace this unfiltered vision, or was she steering them toward a dark and turbulent sea? Would they see her as a leader, or merely a young analyst overstepping her bounds? An ominous silence followed her proposal. David leaned in, his expression serious yet supportive. "The approach makes sense, Sarah. However, we all know change is met with resistance. Are you prepared for the pushback?" Her thoughts swirled. She faced an uncharted realm filled with uncertainty. Yet she also sensed a resolve building within her. "Yes, I am," she said, the words spilling out before she had time to second-guess them. "The only way to solidify our future is to confront the risks head-on. Our stakeholders deserve transparency, not just polished reports." As murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, a chill of realization washed over Sarah. This wasn't merely a professional challenge, it felt like a crucible testing her very essence. There it was, the raw honesty that had propelled her to this moment, now serving as her ally. David's voice broke through the haze. "I think we have the momentum to act on this, but we need a plan." He turned to Sarah. "Can you lead the audit initiative?" His question landed like a flash of lightning. The weight of leadership settled onto her shoulders, and with it came a blend of exhilaration and doubt. "Yes, absolutely," she affirmed, the conviction infusing her voice with newfound clarity. Internal gears shifted as she envisioned a coordinated effort, gathering cross-functional teams, rallying diverse perspectives around this crucial mission. As she contemplated this grand initiative, her mind flickered toward how much she still had to learn. Could she galvanize others toward a shared vision? "Excellent," David replied, his approval palpable. "Let's prepare to present this to the board next week. Sarah, you'll lead it." A mixture of apprehension and excitement surged within her. The feeling was intoxicating. Just as hope began to bloom, a question gnawed at the back of her mind. In stepping into this role, could she genuinely inspire others to challenge the status quo, or would fear ensure they fell back into complacency? As the meeting concluded, Sarah found herself walking alongside David. "Regardless of how this unfolds, know that you are more than capable of leading this," he said, sensing her trepidation. It felt grounding, yet unfamiliar. "Just remember, the path of leadership involves uncertainty, but it's also filled with profound potential for growth." He was right, she realized, but growth often required a willingness to be uncomfortable, to face both external influences and internal hesitations head-on. The next phase would encompass lessons she hadn't even anticipated, entangled with the need to rally her colleagues and assert her vision. But what if the reality of leading this initiative exposed her to deeper insecurities? As she polished her notes that evening, the weight of her new role resonated within her. Would she rise to meet the challenge, or would the pressure consume her? Sarah's reflection grew fiery. She was teetering on the precipice of something life-changing, and she felt as if everything would hinge on how she approached the storm ahead. With her destiny set in motion, she tried to quiet the rising tide of self-doubt as her pen danced over the page. What hidden competencies could emerge under pressure? The time had come for Sarah to confront her own limitations. How far would she be willing to venture into this uncharted territory? And what unforeseen repercussions awaited her within this? Unfolding narrative? The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Sarah's office, casting stripes of light across the cluttered workspace. The moment she sat down, her heart raced with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Today marked the beginning of her leadership role in the audit initiative, and the enormity of her responsibility pressed heavily on her chest. She opened her laptop and began reviewing her presentation notes. Each bullet point felt like a mile marker on a treacherous path to an unseen destination. How would she command the attention and respect of her colleagues? Questions darted through her mind, shadowing her confidence. What if they dismiss her ideas? What if her inexperience became the very source of failure? Taking a deep breath, she reminded herself of David's words, potential for growth. She had to lean into that potential, not shy away from it. Pushing aside her fears, she reached out to department heads to schedule a kickoff meeting. Each response was a testament to her growing network within the company. This collaboration was vital. An error of this magnitude would require diverse perspectives, and she knew the collective intelligence of those around her would be invaluable. Encouraged by the positive responses, she spent the day drafting an agenda that emphasized accountability, engagement, and clear action plans. As the day of the meeting approached, Sarah felt the pressure intensify. On the morning of the kickoff, she arrived early to prepare. Each member of the team entered the room with their own set of expectations, and she could sense their skepticism. Were they thinking she didn't belong at the helm, simply a young analyst trying to steer the ship? She opened the meeting with a clear vision. "Thank you all for being here. I understand that undertaking an audit process can be daunting, but I believe we have a unique opportunity to strengthen our integrity and reaffirm our commitment to our stakeholders. As we embark on this audit, transparency and teamwork will be our guiding principles." The room was silent at first, reactions muted. Sarah felt beads of perspiration at her temples. She had to break the ice. Let's consider for a moment why we are here. Our reputation hinges on our ability to be transparent and proactive. We owe it to ourselves and to the company's future to tackle this challenge with courage. One of her colleagues, a seasoned finance manager, narrowed his eyes as he leaned back in his chair. "It's easy to talk about courage, Sarah, but things are not as simple as they seem. How can we trust that this audit is your priority over our regular responsibilities?" His challenge hung in the air like a weight. Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline. "Your concerns are valid," she replied evenly. "This audit is not just another task. It's a crucial investment in our integrity. Together, we can uncover not only the problem, but also new growth opportunities for our team and the company as a whole." Few heads nodded, and another colleague chimed in. "All right, so what's the plan? How do we start?" With renewed energy, she launched into her well-prepared roadmap, outlining roles, timelines, and the collaborative tools that would facilitate their work. Each point she made was bolstered by the data and the rationale that had guided her analysis. As her colleagues engaged, asking questions and offering insights, she could feel the tides shifting. The air felt lighter, and with it dawned a realization. Leadership was not about stepping into a role, it was about stepping up, being open to conversation, and fostering an environment where others felt safe to voice their ideas and reservations. After the meeting, conversations blossomed among the team members. Sarah lingered at the back, reflecting on how invigorated she felt after confronting her doubts. She began to understand that this role was not just about managing a crisis, it was also about discovering her own potential to inspire others. But just as certainty began to blossom within her, an email notification flashed across her screen. Urgent, meeting to discuss emerging issues. The feeling of unease crept back in. What had she not anticipated? Were there deeper issues lurking within the operational frameworks that no one had accounted for? As she prepared to delve into this new challenge, Sarah felt the familiar blend of anxiety and excitement. The uncharted territory continued to stretch before her. Where would this path lead, and who would she become by the end of it all? This was only the beginning, and the storm she was starting to navigate was about to get even more intense. Would it bring her closer to her team or further into isolation? The urgency of the email consumed Sarah as she clicked to open it, her heart racing anew. A request to join the executive team in an emergency meeting felt like a tidal wave crashing over her nascent confidence. What could possibly be that serious? As the minutes ticked by, her mind raced with possibilities. Arriving at the boardroom, she was greeted by the serious faces of her superiors and department heads, a stark contrast to her recent meeting filled with engagement and learning. The room felt oppressive, stifled by tension. Taking a seat at the end of the long table, Sarah noted the clattering of pens and the rustling of papers, each sound amplifying her sense of foreboding. The CEO opened the meeting, his voice steady yet laced with urgency. "We've uncovered some allegations regarding discrepancies in our financial reporting. The implications could affect our stakeholders significantly." Whispers erupted among the team, a mixture of disbelief and concern. Unused to being at the center of company crises, Sarah felt her instincts sharpen. This was not merely academic anymore. It was personal, with real-world consequences for everyone involved. "Sarah," the CEO continued, "you've been leading the audit initiative. I trust you'll have primary insights. What's your take on this?" Caught off guard, she blinked in disbelief. Confronted by their scrutiny, the room seemed to shrink around her. In a matter of seconds, she was thrust into a pivotal role, and the stakes had suddenly escalated beyond her preparation. Our focus," Sarah started, fumbling for her notes, "was to ensure we uncover any operational oversights in our financial documentation. We've established a comprehensive review procedure." While she spoke, disbelief mingled with a creeping dread. Could it be that they'd missed something fundamental? As her colleagues began firing questions about the audit process and safeguards, a wave of doubt washed over her. What if her efforts were insufficient? Would her leadership crumble under the weight of scrutiny? A quiet voice inside challenged her to challenge them. "The audit is a vital step," she replied, attempting to harness a steady tone, "but we need to also address potential issues proactively. Can we examine any unusual patterns or discrepancies from the past fiscal quarter?" The group's conversations quickly shifted to tactical planning. Support began to coalesce as the executive team rallied around her suggestion. Sarah felt the flickering of hope coursing through her. It was now or never. She outlined a plan to reassess recent reports and engage the finance department in a more streamlined collaboration to rectify any errors swiftly. During a break, as they reviewed their action items, Sarah noticed David lingering in the hallway. His slight nod of encouragement felt fortifying. She approached him and said, "I didn't expect to be in the thick of it like this." "Neither did you. But it's not about expectations, it's how you adapt." David's words hung in the air, igniting a spark of resolve within her. She felt her instincts sharpen. She could do this. Back in the boardroom after the break, a strained atmosphere still tinged with urgency surrounded the table. They refocused their strategy, now emphasized by interdepartmental communication. As the committing discussions continued, her earlier questions resurfaced. Had she missed a major issue earlier in the planning stages, a flaw that needed addressing? Days blurred into a whirlwind of meetings and correspondences as they sifted through piles of reports. Sarah unearthed a handful of peculiar figures in the data, a budget allocation that didn't match the expenditures filed. Her heart raced. Her instincts had been right. Those seemingly innocuous numbers could indicate a deeper issue. The realization clawed at her. If confirmed, would this new discovery lead to even greater disturbances within the departmental frameworks? As the deadline loomed for their findings, Sarah faced a daunting crossroads. Should she confront the implications of what she had discovered, risking the fragility of her leadership, or remain silent and temper the storm building on the horizon? The weight of the decision bore heavily upon her shoulders. Beneath the pressure, something ignited deep within. The challenge ahead was not just about saving the company, but a pivotal moment for her own growth. What would she choose? Would this fear of confrontation keep her from rising to her true potential? The decision loomed, each option highlighting a part of her she had yet to unveil. Would this be the bravest decision of her life, or the moment she fell apart? The storm was far from over. The clouds gathered with enticing danger, setting the stage for either triumph or despair. The report sprawled across her table like a smoldering wreckage, revealing the fissures in the company's financial strategy. The figures danced mockingly in front of Sarah, compelling her to confront the undeniable reality that lay ahead. Had they really missed something so crucial? The numbers told a story far more unsettling than she'd anticipated, and each decimal felt like a ticking clock, amplifying her internal disarray. Tension thundered in her veins. Would they listen when she unveiled her findings? Would they see her as an ally in crisis or as the bearer of unwelcome news? She'd spent years cultivating her professional persona, slowly building a reputation that combined diligence and insight. Now, all of that hung precariously on this one moment. Her pulse quickened as she replayed the nagging thought, to act or not to act. David's earlier words echoed, a reminder that adaptation was essential to survival in the treacherous waters of corporate politics. Yet the fear of stepping out boldly threatened to engulf her resolve, twisting it into an anxious knot. The stakes had risen, and she felt the heat of impending failure looming behind her. Once she stood at the edge of a chasm, hesitant to leap. Now she felt the push of purpose against her back. Sarah needed to specialize her instincts into a decisive strategy. The very first step was to gather her thoughts and present her findings. The board reconvened, and she saw the calculations in their eyes. Would they greet her as the solution to their dilemma, or as a catalyst for deeper turmoil? "Team," she began, her voice steadying amidst a wave of uncertainty. "As we've progressed through the audit, I've identified discrepancies that align alarmingly with our recent financial challenges." Each word felt heavy but necessary. "Budget allocations haven't matched expenditures, and if my projections hold, it could indicate serious issues in reporting consistency." Silence fell like a thick fog, stifling the room as her colleagues processed the implications. Some faces reflected fear, others suspicion. The tension was palpable, and she fought the impulse to retreat, to downplay her assertions. One of the department heads, a seasoned analyst, raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Do you have evidence to support these claims, Sarah?" She took a breath, summoning the composure she'd cultivated through years of negotiation and analysis. "I've compiled the data, showing trends that suggest a systematic issue. I believe this could be rectified with enhanced oversight and a collaborative approach across departments." Her voice, though unwavering, concealed the swell of turmoil raging within, like a calm surface disguising dark waters beneath. As the meeting progressed, her command of the discussion grew. They parsed numbers together, moving into details about approaches for integration across finance and audit that resonated with the group. Each suggestion reinforced a growing camaraderie, a collective push toward accountability that Sarah had long yearned for. By the end of the session, her unyielding confidence began to reshape the tide. The focus shifted as colleagues joined her in examining the figures. Each affirmation she received formed a scaffold around her emotional core, revealing the leader within. She started to believe in her capacity to change the narrative. But as she departed the boardroom, adrenaline surged through her. This was merely the first step on a longer road. The financial discrepancies hinted at deeper faults within the organizational structure. Would her courage to suggest a broader audit lead to a seismic shift in the company's operational dynamics? Or would this discovery open further Pandora's boxes, unraveling the very fabric of their collective work culture? The questions nagged at her as she prepared for the relentless wave of tomorrow, a day that would demand even more from her than today had. As shadows grew long, she felt an exhilarating fear pulse through her veins. Was she ready to confront not only the discrepancies, but also the potential fallout that might ensue? As she sat alone in her office, reflecting on the challenges terming at the horizon, Sarah realized that the storm was not merely outside. It resided within her. What voices still lay dormant inside her, waiting for the right moment to emerge? The truth clawed its way to the forefront of her consciousness, on the cusp of revelation. She could face the unknown or yield to her fears, and the decision was hers alone. The stakes had never been higher, and the next morning would bring her face to face with the magnitude of her own choices. Would she step fully into her power or retreat into self-doubt? The answer awaited her, and the clock was ticking. The boardroom was an arena of expectation. Sarah stood at the head of the table, her heart racing as the weight of the upcoming presentation settled on her shoulders. The pristine slides behind her glowed with data, revealing not just numbers, but insights she had unearthed during the audit. Today, the stakes were higher than ever. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice resonating with a newfound authority. "As you know, we've been investigating discrepancies that could directly impact our financial integrity. Today, I'll outline the issues we've identified and propose actionable steps to mitigate any potential damage." The room was filled with familiar faces, but for the first time, Sarah no longer felt overshadowed by their experience. Instead, she acknowledged their skepticism as a challenge, one that she was ready to meet. She delved into the details of her analysis, explaining the irregularities she had discovered in the budget allocations. The inconsistencies observed are not just accounting errors, they reflect deeper flaws in our financial management practices. Addressing these now will not only save us from potential reputational harm, but also position us as a more transparent and resilient organization moving forward. A recognition began to ripple across the table. Colleagues who once viewed her warily now leaned in with curiosity and concern. Sarah's confidence surged as she presented a graph illustrating the trend of misreporting over the last few quarters. Data came to life in her hands, illustrating not only a problem, but portraying it as a rallying point for change. As she reached the end of her presentation, a hand rose from the group, a senior vice president whom she had always respected. "Sarah, this is impressive work. Given the severity of these findings, what specific measures do you recommend we take?" A thrill coursed through her. They were engaging her as a peer, an equal. I propose a cross-departmental task force dedicated to a full financial audit, engaging finance, compliance, and operations. This collaborative approach would allow us to implement corrective measures swiftly and communicate transparently with our stakeholders. The board discussed fervently amongst themselves, mulling over her suggestions. Looking around the room, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of achievement. She had become a conduit of change, channeling her fears into purpose. This was her moment, not just as a leader, but as an innovative thinker capable of steering the company toward a new dawn. The ensuing conversations were vibrant, filled with enthusiasm and determination. Sarah's heart swelled as she realized she was no longer just the housekeeper's daughter or an overlooked analyst. She was the catalyst for their next chapter. When she wrapped up the session, she felt a palpable shift in the atmosphere, a transformation rooted in shared responsibility. "Thank you for your insights, Sarah," David concluded, glancing around at the team with pride. "Your leadership on this initiative is crucial, and I hereby appoint you as lead on the Financial Integrity Task Force moving forward." A rush of warmth filled her. The recognition felt deserved. It was validation not just of her work, but of her journey. She had grown exponentially in the past few weeks, from a hesitant participant to a driving force within the organization. The meeting adjourned, and as Sarah lingered to gather her materials, she caught David's eye. He approached her, his expression imbued with earnest admiration. "You've conquered fears and proven your capability, Sarah. This is just the beginning. Embrace your newfound position." With each word, she anchored herself more firmly in this transformation. "Thank you, David. I appreciate your guidance throughout this process. I realize now that it's about more than numbers. It's about integrity, collaboration, and the trust we build as a team." As she left the boardroom, Sarah felt a surge of clarity and pride. She had taken a leap into the unknown and emerged victorious, carving out a solid path for herself within the corporate sphere. Reflecting on her journey, she recognized not just personal growth, but professional maturation, qualities she would continue to develop as she advanced in her career. Outside the building, the sun kissed her face, illuminating the road ahead. This moment, this recognition, was not an end, but a new beginning that she had anticipated. Reaching for her phone, she snapped a picture of the skyline reflecting the sunset. It symbolized her aspiration and triumph. This was her moment. She would embrace every challenge that lay ahead, proving to herself and others that she belonged in the arena of leadership. With confidence solidified, she was ready to continue forging her path, standing tall in the belief that she wouldn't just navigate corporate landscapes, she would shape them. And as the day turned into night, she couldn't help but smile, the thrill of knowing she had truly stepped into her power, enveloping her like a warm embrace. Now you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire your journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help reach others who need to hear this message. Comment below about your reactions and theories on this conclusion. Your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share, because true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of spreading this powerful message.